Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
For some context about myself, I'm a 27-year-old biracial woman with a mixed heritage of white and Hispanic background. My father's side is English, Irish, and Scottish, while my mother's side is Mexican and Spanish. Because of this mix, I ended up with lighter skin compared to most of my mother's side of the family. Something interesting about our family genes is that the men tend to be big and burly, while us women often look younger than we actually are. I still get mistaken for a teenager even though I'm pushing 30. This wild story happened about 2 or 3 years ago during one of our regular family gatherings. Before the whole pandemic situation changed everything, we used to have these amazing parties with home-cooked food, music, and even piñatas. During one of these get-togethers, my uncle asked me and two of my male cousins to run to the store for some BBQ supplies. Now, me and these cousins have always been super close. Even though we were all well over 21, we were pretty excited about this store run because it meant we could pick out whatever alcohol we wanted for the party. It was finally our turn to make the drink selections. We got to the store and were having a great time trying to figure out my uncle's terrible handwriting on the shopping list. That's when I noticed this woman giving us the death glare. We figured we were being too rowdy, so we quieted down and split up to get everything faster. I was checking out the meat section when this woman approached me. She asked if I was alright and if I needed any help. I politely declined, thinking she was just trying to help me pick out meat. But then she leaned in close and whispered that if I needed help getting away from those men, I shouldn't be afraid to tell her. Confused, I told her again that I was fine and explained that those men were my cousins. She gasped and went on a rant about how I must be brainwashed into thinking they were family. She even had the nerve to say they had ruined my beautiful skin by making me tan and getting tattoos to look like them. She pointed at my forearm tattoo and my tan lines, which showed a pretty stark contrast between my natural light skin and my sun-darkened skin. I tried to get away from her, but she grabbed my arm. I immediately told her to let go of me and not to touch me. She dropped my arm but started crying dramatically, apologizing and saying she was just trying to help because they must hurt me so much. I demanded to know what exactly she thought she was helping with, and reminded her again that those men were my cousins, telling her I didn't appreciate what she was suggesting about them. Right then, my cousins came down the aisle asking if I was ready to go. Before I could answer, she charged at them, screaming racial slurs and accusing them of kidnapping me. She yelled that they had brainwashed me into thinking we were related and had abused me so much I couldn't bear to be touched. She finished by saying people like them were destroying the country. My first cousin yelled back, asking what was wrong with her and insisting that I was their cousin and they weren't doing anything to me. My second cousin called her a racist witch and came over to check if I was okay. Meanwhile, she continued screaming racial slurs and accused them of buying alcohol to get me drunk so they and their cartel buddies could do something to me later. The butcher behind the counter announced he had called security and told us to go to the front of the store while he kept her away from us. This made her completely lose it. She lunged at the butcher, screaming about not letting them leave with an innocent child, and accused him of helping with an abduction. We didn't stick around to watch her meltdown and headed straight to the front, where security was waiting. While I was showing my ID to prove I wasn't some kidnapped child, we heard over the radio that she'd started throwing merchandise at the butcher and security guard. She'd even found another Hispanic family shopping with actual small children and accused them of kidnapping too. When the police arrived, we got to witness her getting hauled away in handcuffs, still screaming racial slurs. This time at the officer of color who was arresting her. She ended up getting some jail time for violating her probation and for assault. We gave our statements, finally got our shopping done, and headed back home for some much-needed family time and drinks. My family still laughs about it now, especially since we found out later that Karen had to do community service at a Hispanic community center as part of her sentence. Let me start by telling you a bit about myself. I'm a 16-year-old who started working at a grocery store during the pandemic. It wasn't really my first choice, but with school being remote and having too much free time on my hands, I figured I might as well earn some money. Plus, my mom thought it would be good for me to learn some responsibility. Speaking of my mom, she's a probation officer. She's tough but fair, and she's always taught me to stand up for what's right. She's gone through extensive training in law enforcement, including dealing with hostile individuals. I had been working at the store for about 2 weeks when this incident happened. Usually I worked 4-hour shifts after school, but this day was different. It was my first 8-hour shift, and I was nervous but excited. The store manager had been impressed with how I handled customers. I always tried to make them laugh and feel welcome, even with all the stress of the pandemic going on. The store had strict COVID protocols in place. We had signs everywhere reminding customers to maintain 6 feet of distance, and we had to sanitize the conveyor belts between customers. Most people were understanding, even if they were frustrated with the restrictions. 5 hours into my shift, I was stationed at the bagging area when I spotted her. She had that distinctive haircut that usually signals trouble, but I didn't want to judge. My coworker was operating the register while I handled the bagging. The woman looked at the COVID safety sign and without hesitation took it down from its spot. My coworker politely asked her to put the sign back, explaining that we needed it there for other customers' safety. The woman let out an annoyed sigh and slammed the sign back onto the edge of the conveyor belt so hard I thought it might break. When she finished putting her groceries on the belt, she came around to my side where I was bagging. I greeted her warmly and asked about her day, but she completely ignored me. I kept my head down and focused on bagging her items carefully. That's when she started micromanaging everything I did. She complained about the bags, insisting they would break and demanding I double bag everything. The thing is, it was already double bagged, but I figured it was easier to just add another bag than argue. She continued criticizing, saying I couldn't put that many items in one bag or it would break on her. The bag in question only had a bag of flour, 2 cans of pasta sauce, and a ketchup bottle. I'd bagged much heavier items before without any problems, but she wasn't having it. She started taking everything out except the flour, then threw the extra bag at me like it was trash. She then started yelling about how I should know how to bag groceries properly, calling me an idiot and demanding to see my manager. When I tried to explain that the manager was helping other customers, she slapped me across the face, hard enough to make my ears ring. What she didn't know was that my mom was shopping in the store at that exact moment. We have a rule that family members can't check out at the same register as their relatives who work there, so she was at another lane. She had heard the commotion but couldn't see what was happening at first. When she moved her cart to the bagging area of her lane, she had a clear view of this woman assaulting me. My mom immediately went into law enforcement mode. She commanded the woman to put her hands behind her head and turn around, her gun raised. The woman looked confused but complied when she saw my mom's badge, her face turning white as a sheet. My mom didn't have handcuffs with her since she was off duty, so she called the police. They arrived within minutes. The responding officers reviewed the security footage, took statements from everyone present, and arrested the woman for assault of a minor. She was charged with assault, and because I was a minor, the charges were more severe. She ended up getting banned from all stores in our chain, had to pay a hefty fine of $150, and was sentenced to community service, ironically, at a food bank where she had to bag groceries herself. The store manager gave me the rest of the day off with pay and implemented a new zero-tolerance policy for customer violence against employees. They also installed better security cameras and provided extra training for dealing with hostile customers. My mom still shops at the store while I'm working, though she stays in a different area. She says it's just to buy groceries, but I know she's keeping an eye out. I don't mind. It's nice to know someone has your back, especially when you're just trying to do your job during a pandemic. I've always been a huge gaming enthusiast, saving up birthday money and doing extra chores around the house to afford games. But I've been stuck playing on an ancient laptop that could barely run Minecraft. This Christmas, though, everything changed when my mom surprised me with a brand new gaming desktop computer. She had been secretly putting money aside from her overtime shifts at the hospital to make this happen. The setup process was amazing, watching all those high-end components come together into this beautiful machine. My friends were blown away when I showed them during our Discord call, especially when they saw me running Counter-Strike Global Offensive at maximum settings. During our call, my friends mentioned something strange about house number 15 on our street. It had been vacant for months after the previous owners moved out, but they'd heard rumors about some entitled woman and her kids sneaking around there sometimes. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too excited about finally being able to play games without constant lag. That night, while I was in the middle of a competitive match, I noticed movement outside my window. When I looked over, I saw two faces pressed against the glass. A woman and a young boy, probably around 10 years old. The kid was whining to his mother about wanting to play on my computer. I was completely freaked out. Who does that? Just stands there peering into someone's house at night? I yelled at them to go away and quickly closed the curtains, my heart racing. I could hear them mumbling outside for a while before they finally left. The next morning I was woken up by aggressive knocking on our front door. Still groggy, I dragged myself downstairs and opened it. When I asked if I could help them, I realized it was the same woman from last night, with her kid bouncing impatiently beside her. She demanded that her son be allowed to play on my computer. When I refused, her kid started whining to his mom about wanting to play. The woman tried to reassure him that I would give him the computer in a minute. The entitlement in her voice was unreal. Thankfully, my mom heard the commotion and came to investigate. When she asked what was going on, the woman repeated her demand about letting her son play on my PC. My mom backed up my refusal, but the woman kept insisting, saying that sharing is caring. My mom tried explaining that the computer was brand new and she didn't want it getting damaged. What happened next was like something out of a nightmare. The woman and her kid suddenly shoved past us and bolted upstairs. By the time we caught up, they were trying to unplug my computer. In their rush to grab it, they lost their grip, and I watched in horror as my brand new PC crashed to the floor. The woman just said, "Oops," like it was nothing, while my mom screamed at her about what she'd done. My mom immediately called the police. When they arrived, this woman had the audacity to try and claim the computer was actually theirs, saying we had stolen her son's PC. My mom tried explaining that it was ours and that I had gotten it for Christmas. The woman then tried claiming that this was her house. The police officer told them to leave while they investigated the situation. After checking our documentation and the house deed, the officer confirmed that the house belonged to us. The woman still wouldn't give up, now claiming that they had left the PC behind when they moved. My mom pulled out the receipt from Christmas, showing the recent purchase date and her credit card information. When the officer started asking if we wanted to press charges, my mom and I didn't even let him finish before enthusiastically agreeing. Turns out the woman had been squatting in the abandoned house and scoping out the neighborhood for things to steal. She ended up getting charged with attempted theft, breaking and entering, destruction of property, and trespassing. Her kid was sent to live with his dad, who was horrified when he found out what had been going on. The insurance covered the replacement of my PC, and we got a security system installed. Sometimes I still catch myself checking the windows at night, but at least I can game in peace knowing that entitled duo won't be coming back. I've been working in security for nearly a decade now, but this story from my early days still makes me laugh. A few years back, I landed a job as an unarmed security guard at this massive wind farm construction site. The place was perfect for wind turbines, all rolling hills and steady breeze. Pretty straightforward job, or so I thought. At first, it was just me watching over expensive equipment and making sure hunters didn't accidentally shoot holes in anything important. Then someone stole a roll of copper wire using this old dirt road nobody paid attention to, and everything changed. The company bumped up security to 2 guards per shift and required everyone to have badges to enter the property. Now this is where our entitled ex-official enters the picture. This guy owned a cabin behind the property and used to use that dirt road as his personal shortcut. When we started requiring badges, you'd think we'd asked him to give up his firstborn child or something. When I explained that he needed a badge to access the property and that it was a simple process requiring just ID and basic information, he got angry. He started ranting about his former position and claimed he had an easement right. Thing is, he didn't. There was another road he could use. It wasn't as nice, but it existed, which meant no legal easement. The company was actually pretty reasonable about it too. They weren't charging anything for the badges, just wanted to know who was coming and going. But this guy, he made it his mission to speed past guards without stopping. When that didn't work, we installed a gate. He tried to get himself arrested so he could sue the company. Real piece of work. Then came that Sunday. I was working a mid-shift when he showed up ready to make trouble. He started demanding that I open the gate immediately, shouting about his right to access his property. I pretended not to hear him clearly and started closing the manual steel gate. He tried to drive forward, so I planted myself right in front of his truck. When I told him I couldn't let him through without proper authorization, he demanded that I get out of his way. I pointed out that we both knew he wouldn't run me over, since that wouldn't help his case for unrestricted access. Seeing that approach wasn't working, he switched tactics and threatened to block the road. I told him about the crew working overtime that day and mentioned that I wouldn't stop them from doing whatever they needed to do to get home. That's when he started insisting that I call the police. The situation got really amusing then. I had strict instructions not to call the police on him. The company just wanted him to come back during business hours to get his pass. But he kept pushing, asking if we had a phone in the guard shack, then if I had a cell phone. When I denied having either, he offered his own phone but said he didn't want to call 911 since it wasn't an emergency. He even asked about a phone book and tried to get me to use his phone to call the sheriff. When I refused all his attempts, he finally called the police on himself. Feeling satisfied that he'd forced a confrontation, he moved his truck aside. 30 minutes later, when the first deputy arrived, I explained the situation. I told them that neither my company nor the property owner had any issues with him, and that he was outside the gate, not blocking anything. I made sure to mention that he had called them himself. The deputy just shook his head and went to talk to the ex-official. 4 more officers showed up. Must have been a slow day. They spent almost an hour deciding what to do, probably because they were having too much fun with the situation. In the end, they gave him a ticket for filing a false report. When he drove away, he was shouting out his window about how he got his day in court, exactly what he wanted. One of the officers just laughed and commented that it wouldn't be the kind of court day he was hoping for. He ended up with a hefty fine and was required to take a class about proper use of emergency services. Plus, the company used his false report as grounds to permanently ban him from the property. Now he has to take the long way around, every single time. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.